It's a complex situation, but I'll do my best to explain. I have a bio son, Leo, 16, from my previous relationship. I married his stepmom, who is a mother of 2 boys, Connor, 20, deceased, and Derek, 12. I've never had the pleasure to meet Connor, who tragically passed away from a motorcycle accident. Derek was so devastated by this loss, and although it's been years, he's still pretty much grieving. I've seen tons of pictures and videos of Connor and made efforts to get to know who he was as a way to share Derek's grief and be there for him, to lend an ear and a comforting shoulder. It's safe to say that Derek and I grew a strong bond in no time. But my son Leo isn't close to Derek. Understandable, because not all siblings and step-siblings are the same. Leo and Derek are different in everything, which isn't a bad thing, but Leo calls himself the brutally honest type and makes insensitive comments about Derek most of the time. They tend to be under the guise of advice. Derek never complained, so I had to step in and tell Leo to stop being insensitive towards his stepbrother, especially with everything regarding Connor and his memory. Leo would say, "Okay, I get it, and I won't do it again." Days ago, Leo wanted to hang out with friends and asked Derek if he wanted to join. Derek agreed and put on Connor's hoodie before going out. Leo commented on the hoodie and called it ugly and asked him to put on something else, but Derek insisted on wearing it or not go. Leo dropped it. Hours later, Derek came home crying with his hoodie in hand. He said Leo and friends cut it into pieces while he was in the bathroom after they convinced him to take it off. I was furious. I asked Leo, and he said it was his friend's idea, then said he had to do it since Derek wears it everywhere, and it looked old and embarrassing. I reminded him who this hoodie belonged to, and he said, "So what? Maybe this will help him move on in life." I told him his birthday was cancelled and his friends aren't welcome anymore. He pitched a fit saying his birthday was a right, not a privilege, and I can't cancel it. He had my ex criticize my decision and wanted to host his birthday party, but I refused because he's grounded, so no party anywhere. She and her family called me awful and ridiculous and asked me to think how Leo will hate me for this, but I insisted he needed punishment for putting his stepbrother through this. My wedding was September 21st, 2019. We had a fairly decent-sized wedding. My cousin, on my stepdad's side, we are not close whatsoever, and her boyfriend have only been dating not even 6 months at this point. I've met the guy once before my wedding, and he never shows up to any family functions. We're all having a great time at my wedding. My husband and I are mingling with guests while everyone dances. The next thing I know is my cousin's boyfriend asks the DJ for his mic and goes to the center of the dance floor saying he has an announcement to make and calls my cousin over. So, I rush over and say, "Nope, no one is getting engaged during my special day, especially during my reception. You can get engaged later tonight, but not right now. It's my day. Thank you for understanding," and I go to walk away. My cousin starts puffing and my aunt, her mom, starts yelling at me and calling me an entitled brat. It causes a huge fight and they all end up leaving. My mom, stepdad, dad, and stepmom all are on my side and were even pissed that they think it's okay to do that during a wedding they all paid for. My nana, stepdad's mom, says I was wrong and told me to apologize and call them over and allow him to propose. Needless to say, it didn't happen. Flash forward to Christmas. It was terrible. My stepdad's entire side were rude and ignoring my husband and I. And of course, guess what happens? My cousin and her now fiancé announced their wedding date, September 21st, 2020. I'm beyond pissed and so not planning to go. It's my damn 1-year wedding anniversary. My family is upset that they would do that to piss me off for not allowing them to get engaged during my reception. My cousin says they chose to get married on their 1-year engagement anniversary. Either way, regardless of the real reason, I'm still upset. Of course, my nana is super excited. My brother and I do not get on. When we were younger, he'd go out of his way to make my life a living hell. To my parents' credit, they did tell him off for it when they caught him, but they both worked long hours and didn't have the energy to deal with our arguments. This continued into adulthood. He was salty that he failed his college course the first time around. There was a bad argument in our family a while ago, and it all started because I refused to decorate my brother's living room. I won't go into too much detail, but he wanted a pretty hefty discount, I said no and he threw a tantrum. Instead of being a grown-up and talking to me, he decided to hook up with my toxic ex-girlfriend and the mother of my child. I can't go into a lot of detail about what she was like, but she was not a nice person. She never really bonded with our son when he was born and I was left to do everything by myself. She eventually walked out on us and refused to have any contact with our son. She'll post on Facebook now and then about her beautiful baby boy to get sympathy votes, but that's about it. I have been a single dad for almost 3 years now and I absolutely adore my son, but it hurts to think that one day he might question why his mom didn't want anything to do with him. How am I supposed to explain that to him? Anyway, it bothered me when my brother told me they'd hooked up together. It hurt even more when he started dating her. It had taken me so long to get over what she did to me and my child, and now my own brother was bringing her back into my life. Yesterday we had a family video call. Parents are high risk and we're not taking any chances. When my brother decided to announce that he and my ex were expecting, I just froze. I didn't know what to do or think. I could feel myself starting to cry a little bit and it got a bit harder to breathe. Eventually, I decided to just congratulate them and then made up some lie about needing to put my son down for a nap and left. I received a bunch of messages from my brother and his GF telling me that I stole their thunder. After I left, my parents and some other family members started worrying if I was okay, and not really focusing on their news. My uncle told me that I should have just been a man and stuck it out instead of making excuses to get out of it. After all, it was expected that our kids would be raised around each other. I feel like maybe I shouldn't have left the call, but at the same time it would have been worse if I'd stayed and had a full-blown panic attack in front of everyone. Some of the family members are split and have argued that I won't be able to avoid my brother and his family forever, but others believe I was in the right to leave that situation. I don't know what to think. My parents aren't happy, but they don't have the energy to deal with all the hassle my brother would cause. They actually cut him off for a little while when he started dating my ex, but he phoned them constantly and, again, can't go into much detail, but he said he'd do something not so good. They keep him at arm's length, but I have told them not to cut contact because of me. If they want to cut contact on their own accord, then that's fine, but I do not want to be the reason that they have to deal with his tantrums. The rest of the family, for the most part, weren't happy about it but accepted it, or pretended to. When they started getting a bit more serious, my uncle, who told me to be a man, thought it was funny. That's just the kind of person he is. Not for my sake, but for the sake of my son. I don't want to put him through all that. I don't want to go into tons of details. You need to know that for the last 7 years I have not been at home. And during this time my 2 brothers and sisters were still living there. While I was at home, our stepfather abused us mentally and physically. We lived in crappy houses that were covered in real garbage, including animal feces, absolutely everywhere. I haven't heard from my little sister since May. I'm pretty sure she was told to cut contact with all of us. We are her older siblings. My second sister, after my younger sister, is overweight and has spinal problems and has to diet and see a specialist she is not taken to. I told the social worker that I wanted to check on them because they were in a sorry state and because I'm not sure if there is still any physical or psychological abuse going on in the house. This genuinely worries me. I told them what happened to us, hitting walls, throwing things at us, swearing, belittling our character, etc. And told them repeatedly that I really just want to know what my younger brothers and sisters are not the same living conditions as they were. My husband supported me during the call and agreed that it was the right thing to do. All my siblings discussed this beforehand, except for my older sister, who moved out before things got bad, and the 2 who live in the house. We all agreed that this would at least let them know they were being watched and we weren't just disappointed in them, and maybe my mother and SD would keep the house clean nose, etc. CPS contacted my mother very quickly, much faster than I expected. I mean within 3 hours. After that, my older sister, who lives far away and hasn't contacted me for months, calls and she gets mad at me because she knows I called. I didn't deny anything and just said, if they have nothing to hide, then they have nothing to worry about. It will all be over pretty quickly, to which she replied, what if it doesn't? If they are taken away? I said, I hope it doesn't come to that, and if it does, it's not on me. I didn't harm them. I didn't leave animal excrement around the house. I asked, would you let your children live the way we lived? She didn't answer. I asked again and she said, no. I'd keep a decent house, but it's not your job to tell someone else how to parent. I said, okay. So, if that's all, why did you call? I think we're done. She told me that we all need to get over what happened to us and move on. She left long before the violence started and she wasn't around, regardless of my personal experience. I can't help but feel like I did something wrong. I have limited contact with my mother because of her husband, and she denies that any of us have ever been abused. My sister asked, why don't you just come in and see the conditions? I told her, I can't be around my stepfather. I refuse to expose myself to this negativity again. Even though my husband and siblings agree that it was the right thing to do, I still can't help feeling wrong because of it. Like it wasn't my place. But if it wasn't my place, then whose was it? I really would like a third-party opinion on what I did. Am I wrong in reporting my family? Honestly, should I have just kept my mouth shut? I don't mind if I don't have any contact with my mom or older sister. They don't even know that I'm almost 4 months pregnant because we don't talk very much. So the possibility that I'll never have a real relationship doesn't bother me. What worries me is that I don't know if I was right. I called my mother's CPS based on previous experiences of psychological and physical abuse by our stepfather. I have not heard anything from my younger brothers and sisters for a long time, because communication was interrupted. We lived in appalling conditions. There were animal feces, rubbish and mess everywhere. We were beaten, things were thrown at us, etc. I told the police that I was not sure if something was going on for sure because, again, no contact. But I wanted them to check on my siblings. Was I completely out of sorts?